The USB drive was sitting on the kitchen counter, My photographer had handed it to me right after the reception. This little thing holds the most beautiful day of my life. I was still wearing my ring on my right hand. I remember thinking, nothing can touch me right now. His name was Daniel, because he said he didn't want to wait for the right moment anymore. An apartment with mismatched furniture we picked out together at garage sales. I knew what his face looked like when he was pretending to be fine. Or at least, I was expecting photos. That moment everyone talks about. And all 72 of our guests smiling. There were 2 folders. When I got home from our honeymoon, slipped it into my hand with this warm smile and said, and I remember squeezing it tight, thinking, this is it. 7 days of white sand and cold drinks and my new husband's hands in mine. And I remember thinking that was the funniest thing. Daniel with the dark curly hair and the laugh that filled every room he walked into. He said I was the right moment. God, 4 years of building something. Morning coffee, evening walks. I knew what his voice sounded like when he was genuinely happy. After we unpacked our suitcases and ordered takeout and fed Biscuit his dinner, and I plugged in the USB drive. I was expecting to see Daniel's face when he first saw me in my dress. I was expecting flowers and golden hour light. The drive loaded. Sitting there, small, ordinary. The kind of thing I think you're going to love it. 7 days I was still tan, and it didn't fit my left anymore. Daniel, who had proposed to me on a Tuesday, not a Saturday, not a holiday, I believed him. We had been together for 4 years before the wedding. A routine that felt like safety. That evening, Daniel went to take a shower. I was expecting to see myself walking down the aisle. I was expecting to see my mother dabbing her eyes with a tissue. And the other one was labeled with a name. Used to save work files or old photos. Or everything's on here. We had just gotten back from Cancun. I was still glowing. Because my fingers had swollen from the heat. I am the luckiest woman alive. Just a regular Tuesday in November. I believed every single word that man ever said to me. A life. A cat named Biscuit who hated everyone except Daniel. Sunday pancakes, I thought I did. And I sat down on the couch with my laptop. I want you to understand what was going through my mind in that moment. The one where the groom's eyes go soft and maybe a little wet. One was labeled Allers Wedding, final edit, A woman's name, not mine. I remember the way my stomach dropped. It was physical. Like the floor disappeared under me. I sat there for a second just staring at it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the photographer had mixed up drives. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was nothing. I kept telling myself that. It's nothing. Open the wedding folder. Just open the wedding folder and stop. But I didn't. I clicked on the other folder. And what I found inside was not a mistake. It was videos of Daniel, and a woman I had never seen before in my life. The timestamps. And this is the part that took my breath away. The timestamps were from our wedding weekend. Not before we got together. Not years ago. Not some distant past I could find a way to forgive or explain. The most recent one was dated the Friday before our Saturday wedding. The night of our rehearsal dinner. The night we had laughed and toasted. And his mother had given a speech about what a wonderful husband he was going to be. That night, I don't remember standing up, but I was standing. I don't remember walking to the bathroom door, but I was there, leaning against the wall outside it, listening to the water running, listening to Daniel hum something to himself. He always hummed in the shower, some tuneless little melody, and I felt like I was watching myself from across the room. Like I had floated up out of my own body and I was just observing this woman who had just come home from her honeymoon. This woman who had 7 days of salt water in her hair and sand she hadn't fully washed out yet, and a ring on the wrong hand. This woman whose entire world had just collapsed in the 30 seconds it took to open a folder. The water turned off. I went back to the couch. I closed the laptop. And I sat there. And I waited. Daniel came out in his gray sweatpants and his old college t-shirt. The soft blue one I had always loved. And he looked at me and he smiled. That smile, the one I had built 4 years around. You look at the photos yet? He asked. And I said, not yet. And he sat down next to me and put his arm around me and kissed the top of my head and said, "I can't wait to see them." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark next to my husband of 9 days and I stared at the ceiling. And I went through every memory I had of us and I tried to find the cracks. Because they had to be there, right? They had to have always been there. You don't just become someone who does something like this overnight. You don't just suddenly become a liar. It's built. It's practiced. It's a pattern. And I had missed it. I had lived inside it for 4 years and I had completely missed it. The woman in the videos, I found out her name later. It took me about 2 weeks of quiet, careful investigating while I figured out what I was going to do. Her name was Simone. She lived 40 minutes away. She had a job in an apartment and this is the part that made me feel like I was losing my mind. She had photos of Daniel on her phone. Months of photos. Birthday dinners. Weekend trips. The kind of photos you take when you're in a relationship with someone. He had been with her for almost 2 years. 2 years. While I was picking out centerpieces. While I was doing cake tastings. While I was hand-addressing envelopes and arguing with my mother about the seating chart and crying happy tears at my bridal shower. He was with her. And the cruelest part, the part I still have trouble saying out loud, is that she didn't know about me either. She thought they were just taking things slow. She thought he was a man who valued his privacy. She thought the reason he never stayed over on certain nights was because of work. She had no idea. When I finally reached out to her, and yes, I did because I needed to hear it from someone. I needed some version of reality that wasn't just me alone in my own head. She was as devastated as I was. She cried on the phone with me for an hour. A woman I had never met. A woman who had loved the same man. We cried together like we were grieving, because we were. Both of us. Grieving something we hadn't even known we'd lost yet. I confronted Daniel on a Thursday afternoon. I had the laptop open on the kitchen table. I had made coffee, I don't know why. It just felt important to have something to do with my hands. And when he walked in from work and dropped his keys in the little bowl by the door the way he always did, I just said his name, quietly, and he looked at me. And he saw the laptop. And I watched his face. I have thought about that moment more times than I can count. Because what I saw wasn't what I expected. I expected panic. I expected immediate denial. I expected him to scramble. But what I saw first, for just a half second before everything else, was relief. Like he had been waiting. Like some part of him was glad it was finally over. That might have been the most painful thing of all. He didn't lie. I'll give him that. When faced with the undeniable, he didn't lie. He sat down. He put his head in his hands. And he said he was sorry. He said it over and over. He said he didn't know how it had gotten so far. He said he loved me. He said he was confused. He said all of the things that people say when they've been caught. The things that are maybe true and maybe not. The things you can never fully verify. Because you've already learned that you cannot read this person the way you thought you could. I asked him one question. I asked him, on our wedding day, when you were standing at the end of that aisle watching me walk toward you, what were you thinking? He was quiet for a long time. And then he said, I was thinking about how much I wished I was a different person. I moved out 3 weeks later. The divorce was finalized 8 months after that. We had been married for less than a year. We had a cat, some furniture, and a wedding album I still haven't been able to look at. My mother cried more over the divorce than she had at the wedding. My friends were furious in that protective way that made me feel loved even when I couldn't feel anything else. I went to therapy. I still go to therapy. I learned words like compartmentalization and emotional avoidance. And I applied them to Daniel like labels. Like if I could name what he was, I could stop missing who I thought he was. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. When something like this happens, you don't just lose the relationship. You lose the entire story you told yourself about your own life. You lose the version of yourself who was loved the way you thought you were loved. You lose your past because it didn't mean what you thought it meant. And you lose your future because the one you'd planned no longer exists. You're standing in the wreckage of a timeline, and you have to build a completely new one from scratch. Starting from right now, starting from this unfamiliar, disorienting present where everything is different. I still have the USB drive. I know that probably sounds strange. People ask me why I kept it. I'm not sure I have a clean answer. Maybe because it's evidence. Not for any legal reason, that's all done. But evidence for myself. On the days when grief makes things go soft and blurry. On the days when I start to romanticize what we had. On the days when I think maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should have tried harder. Maybe things could have been different. I look at the drive sitting in my drawer and I remember. I remember what was on it. I remember the timestamps. I remember sitting on that couch waiting for my husband to come out of the shower. Knowing everything, saying nothing, just sitting there in that last moment of before. There's a version of me that never plugged in that drive. I think about her sometimes. She would have looked at the wedding photos and cried. Beautiful tears imprinted. Her favorites and hung one in the hallway. She would have built a life on a foundation she didn't know was hollow. Maybe she would have been happy. Maybe ignorance really is that. But I can't be her. I know what I know. And slowly, not quickly, not cleanly, but slowly, I am learning that knowing the truth, even when the truth is devastating, is the only solid ground there is. You can't build anything real on something false. You can only build on what's actually there. I am starting over. And some days that feels like the worst thing in the world. And some days, or just some days, it feels like the first true thing that's happened to me in years.